Hey, good evening everybody. Well, middle class review for late March 2019. Now it's been a very momentous week, tragic week. I'm sure many of you have just been following the events of the attack on a mosque in Christchurch by an Australian white supremacist nut job. A POS, I'd rather call him. A piece of, you can just finish the last word there. I'll try and keep it clean. I've got a few notes here, different things. Now all I can see now is, the reaction straight away, I think, is a normal reaction to these things. Government crackdown on firearms, gun ownership, and even the Crusaders. I mean, this is an attack on freedom of speech. The Crusaders rugby team, they're looking at changing their name because a tiny proportion of the population would find it offensive. Give me a break. I mean, this virtue signalling makes me sick. But I'm going to talk about firearms this time because really, I don't think gun control is the answer in a lot of things. I think culture is the problem. And that's why we have a lot of deaths and violence and stuff like that. Honestly, as a gun owner myself, I have numerous firearms registered in my name. And I want to give you some facts. It's purely on facts, numbers, figures, and what's happened since we had the gun buyback in Australia. That gun buyback was a farce, okay? I'll give you the official figures, but there were way more guns out there than what were handed in. Way more. Millions and millions of guns. You see stupid comedians like Jim Jeffries saying that, there's no guns in Australia. You know, he does a comedy routine looking at gun control and stuff and knocking American gun control and all this. Look, he's a liar. There's heaps of guns in Australia. The culture is different, and I'll tell you why, and I will explain why, and I hope it doesn't take too long. Here is a gun. See here? Here's a toy gun. The only time I bring a gun out of my gun safe is to clean it, shoot it, and kill something like a feral animal or use it for target practice, okay? So I'm not bringing out my real guns. Ooh, here is a toy gun that's like a military style. Scary. But I'll tell you what, the toy is just like the real thing. They're black, they got plastic on them. That's the only difference between a military style gun and another gun, okay? They all kill. I'm going to tell you a couple of guns. These are my favourite guns to shoot that have in my collection. A Tikka, Tikka M55, 22-250. Okay, look that up. It'll come up. It's just a hunting rifle, but guess what? The Australian Special Forces uses them as a sniper rifle for 300 to 400 metre ranges. I've shot a fox in the head, probably at 200 metres, and it was walking. Okay, that's how accurate the damn things are. I could shoot a man in the head without trying. It's got a 5-shot magazine. I reckon if I walked into a crowded airport with a heap of 5-shot magazines, I'd take out 50 people in no time, okay? Very accurate. Way more accurate than some bloody military style semi-auto or something. The other one is a Stoeger Outback Tactical. Now, Stoeger is spelled S-T-O-E-G-E-R. Outback Tactical 12 gauge under and over shotgun. Check that one out. It's got a 20-inch barrel. It's black. It's got plastic bits all over it and a nice shiny green dot on the end of it, okay? It looks scary. It looks badass. It's a tactical weapon. So when idiots say to you, oh, we should ban all tactical weapons and assault weapons, well, guess what? I got one, and it's just a bloody shotgun, okay? These are just words. Guns kill when people who want to kill use them, okay? The actual gun doesn't kill. Look, it's a useless piece of crap. It is nothing until you put ammunition in a magazine, then you put the magazine inside the rifle, then you cock the rifle, then you aim the rifle and shoot one, okay? So you have all these steps before you shoot someone. I agree with Michael Moore, the documentary maker who made Bowling for Columbine. He said, guns don't kill people, Americans kill people. And according to him, 93% of all guns in America are owned by white people. Oh yeah, badass white people. But guess what? Half of all the gun deaths are accidental, okay, in America. Then you look at the other half. He said the vast majority of gun deaths are blacks killing blacks, blacks killing Hispanics, Hispanics killing Hispanics, and Hispanics killing blacks, okay? Black population's only like 13%. The white population's over 60%. Like, what's going on? Obviously a cultural problem. And I believe this. We need to change culture. If you don't want violence, you've got to change the culture. White people are already doing it in Australia. Look at I'm a white Catholic, mate, and it was, let's be honest, if blokes, 20, 30 years ago, blokes would go to a pub, and if they didn't pick up a chick, they'd have a fight, okay? There were fights all the time. But now we've had the campaign, one punch can kill. You know, it's not a common thing. Now it's frowned upon if a bloke goes to a pub and beats people up. Okay? And the thing is too, when you're in a fight, Aussie blokes always use their fists. Now, 1/3 of Australians have got Irish descent. I think that's where it comes from in our culture, because let's face it, I had a guy pull a knife on me once and I called him an effing weak C. I mean, someone might think I'm mentally disturbed saying this, but I mean, for white Aussie blokes, if someone pulls a knife on you, you just think they're a weak person. And you go, put your fists up, mate. I mean, this is, I don't know, it's kind of crazy, but that's the culture. We're more likely to use our fists. Now, I'm going to give you some stats, people, before the gun buyback in 1996 about Australia. So get ready for it, New Zealand. You've already got your calls for, you know, changes in gun laws, and now they're even going to change a rugby team's name to appease people. Shit, you'll have CCTV everywhere now, I guarantee it. But here's what's happened in Australia. Now, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, in 1995, before the gun buyback, there were 67 firearm homicides. There were 300 and something suicides from firearms. But as a comparison, there were 298 deaths from drugs and medication, and there were 2,029 motor vehicle traffic accident deaths. Wow, they should have banned cars. But get this, the gun buyback was a farce, because there were just over 640,000 firearms handed in total. And not all of these were semi-automatics. Most were shotguns and 22, little piddly little things. But according to Fuller Firearms in Sydney, they estimate 150,000 SKS. Okay, they're like an AK-47 copy, but semi-auto, made in China. They reckon 150,000 SKS self-loading centerfire rifles were imported in the late 1980s alone into Australia. Now, some other dealers estimate 350,000, up to 350,000, plus, along with up to 500,000 ex-US military M1 carbines, and yes, they are more powerful than the AR-15, and up to 1 million semi-automatic and pump-action shotguns. Jesus. Now, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, like I said, there were 640,381 firearms handed in. And there were 5 million firearms imported into Australia, and of these, over 4.5 million were rifles. Okay, the rest were handguns. That was between 1934 and 1997. So that's just legal ones, not illegal imports. So 5 million firearms in that time alone. Yes, Australia's got heaps of guns. And then this doesn't include the numbers of guns that were actually made here. Like we have Lithgow Firearms, Sportco, they made SLRs, self-loading rifle, used in Vietnam, things like that. 22s, 303, heaps of guns. And now the Attorney General's Department said, back when they had the gun buyback on, there were 2.5 million firearms in Australia. But the Coalition for Gun Control's Rebecca Peter, she disagrees with the figure and says there were 4 million. Whereas, get this, at a meeting for Australian police ministers, this will shock you. On May 10th, 1996, they were told no reliable figures of total firearms in Australia are available. Estimates for all firearms vary from 3.5 million to 10 million. Best estimates of the numbers of military-style semi-automatics suggest around 350,000 throughout Australia. That doesn't include semi-automatic 22s or shotguns. I'm talking about things like the SKS, an AK-47 looking thing, okay? And they said, they estimated there were 3 million self-loading or pump-action shotguns. Now there's a lot of guns in Australia, okay? But in our culture, I think the problem is a culture. In America, for instance. And also I think the problem is they're spending half their budget on military. I mean, you imagine if that money was spent on schools and better roads and things like that, and infrastructure, well then there'd be less poverty. That would help a lot too. Maybe fewer people out running drugs and killing people. Now, I strongly suggest all of you watch the interview by Waleed Ali interviewing Scott Morrison, our Prime Minister. That was only the other day. Now, Waleed Ali, I'd say this guy at the very least was quite aggressive towards our Prime Minister, and he was basically questioning with things like, is the Liberal National Coalition, are they Islamophobic? Geez. I think it's a farce. I don't believe there is widespread Islamophobia in Australia. I mean, my doctor is Persian, for Christ's sake. He's a nice guy. I don't see it. I really don't. Australia's the most multicultural, successful multicultural country in the world. I don't believe it. Now, he was carrying on about how bad this terrorism was, and what's the government doing about Islamophobia and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, it's funny how all of a sudden he's worried about terrorism. Is it just because it was some white supremacist guy who killed 49 people in a mosque in Christchurch? Sorry to be cynical, but I think so, because here's a quote by Waleed Ali after the Boston Marathon bombing in April 2013. Now, Waleed Ali is a journo now. He hosts a show called The Project on Australian TV, and he's actually a lawyer by trade. He's a Sunni Muslim too. But anyway, this guy, he said in 2013, terrorism is a perpetual irritant, and that while it is tragic and emotionally lacerating, it kills relatively few people and is not any kind of existential threat. They do not shock us, and for that reason, they cannot truly terrorise us. Gee, so what changed, mate? I think all this stuff by guys, like people going on with stuff like this, like Waleed Ali, is not helpful. I think the world needs to look at itself. I think this is the middle class review. This is not the far left, the far right, the extremist, whatever review. It's the middle class review. And I believe this, to have a strong middle class, you need a peaceful middle class. And to have a peaceful middle class, you need a prosperous middle class. And the first way to get to prosperity is to have a solid family. Now you look at poverty in the United States. People say, oh, it's poverty, that's why. And that's the reason why Michael Moore says. Michael Moore, the documentary maker, said, oh, it's poverty that's the problem, and that's why there's so many gun deaths in the black community and Hispanics. Well, what causes it? In 1960, 20% of all children in the black community were in a single parent family, single mothers mainly. Or unmarried mothers, I should say. Look at us now. What's happened since 1960? Over 70% unmarried mothers in the black community now. Okay. I'm old school. I look at it this way. If you're going to have a solid marriage and a solid family base, that's a good start. You've got a better chance of not being in poverty. And even the statistics, it doesn't matter if it's America, Australia, Europe, you name it, where there's single parent households, you're far more likely to have children in poverty, committing crimes, going to jail and things like that. Sure, there are single parents who do a great job. I'm not saying they don't. But it's a damn good head start if you've got a good solid family. So forget about banning guns as much. Focus more on creating a good solid family base, a culture that values education, that values hard work, discipline, and a loving family environment. And that'd be the first step to having peace and a decent society. Stay awesome, people.